Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Tonight I figured that rather than one of my normal speed runs or some other video that we'd do some commentary that I just didn't get a chance to do yesterday because I was recording during the day and I have small children, so it makes it hard to talk while recording. I do hope you enjoyed those videos, and if you haven't gone and seen those videos, by all means go take a watch. They're not really anything special, just my first runs through Heroes Gauntlet, Seed of Sacrifice, and Puppet's Bunker. But I figured we'd talk about the story, then talk about the patch in general, and maybe even the expansion in general, but probably most definitely the expansion in general. My thoughts and feelings on it as the story as a whole and everything. Probably going to get into some spoilers for Shadowbringers and the latest patch, so if you don't want to listen to any of that, by all means, please click off now. Okay. If you're still here, I'm assuming that you don't really mind going into spoilers. Now, I have to say, before we go anywhere, that Shadowbringers is hands down the best expansion of the four of them. Hands down. There is no question. Shadowbringers beats out Heaven's Ward, it beats out Stormblood, it beats out ARR. It's the best. Although, controversial opinion here, I don't see the praise or why Heaven's Ward is so highly praised. The villain Nidhogg is just such a one-note villain that it's painful to play through, in my opinion. He's just a boring one-note villain. Not a great story, and the story seems like the world just pauses when you go through it. Like, oh, hey, look, you've been banished from Ul'dah and Eorzea, and now you can go back to Eorzea. Well, and no one really cares because reasons. Eh. But anyway, I digress. Shadowbringers, 9 out of 10. There's a few things that it's not a perfect story, but it's 9.9 out of 10. It's up there. It's up there. And a lot of the reasons why it's up there is the villains. Emmett Selk and Elidibus. And a lot of the reasons that they're such good villains is that their motivations are, we understand them, they make sense for their characters, and frankly, it's something that Square Enix did extremely well. We understand why, and we would be in their same shoes most likely if we were in their shoes. We would be doing everything that they're doing, trying to get back our friends and family if we had the power to basically erase history and bring back our friends and family. I mean, we get it. The way they're going about it is horribly, horribly wrong, trying to kill millions, billions of people. How they've already killed millions and possibly billions of people to get where they are now. And the pacing of the stories, it just, they're just good villains. I love them, and then when you beat them, it's such a hard moment when you beat them. I almost cried when watching the cutscene after having to beat Elidibus. But that brings me to the one major flaw of the story that I can't quite bring myself to like, is the fact that we beat them. I mean, I don't mind beating them. We had to beat them eventually, but we beat them already. It's like, okay, well, now the three main Ascians that we know of, the three leaders of the Ascians, are all dead. Sure, there's other Ascians out there, but kind of like, okay, well, what are we going to do with them? Like, are they going to have the same impact? What's the whole deal going to be with them? Like, they were the major villains for 4 expansions now. Like, sure, you can say that the Empire was one of the main problems in Stormblood, but That doesn't mean that the Ascians weren't still the main villain, the main threat. That's what we had been building towards them, and now we have to wonder, well, what's next? I honestly don't know. This Ascian that's hanging around with Xenos, honestly, I think he's kind of a clown, and the fact that he took I can't remember his name, Oshi or something. I hated that guy from the moment I saw him in Stormblood, and I still hate him, and the fact that he's an Ascian now makes me want to punch him in the face even more. C'est la vie. But getting back into 5.3 though, I love how the story opens. 5.3 opens with you, Elidibus, basically taking you through a what's the word? A refocus. No, a stroll down memory lane in how we got through ARR into Heaven's Word and Stormblood. I really like that because it's basically like if you skip those expansions or did a story skip, now you've got a basic overview going after you've gotten to that point, a basic overview of everything that you missed. And now maybe you're going to want to go play that New Game Plus because now you're like, okay, well, I've got this overview now, and I kind of, maybe I want to understand it better. I have the overview, but I need the context to fully appreciate everything that was explained to me. And then I can't say I was too thrilled with the whole explanation for all the specters and stuff that came and attacked you beforehand. Like when if they first start showing up, like it's kind of, you kind of get the sense like Elidibus opened up or started the star shower, and then they just started appearing. And then you find out later that, oh, he actually got the memories from the XArc, and now he kind of knows how to do the summoning. So he's just summoning who knows how many, how fast. I don't know, he must have summoned well over 100 freaking people. So who knows what happened to those souls. Hydaelyn rest their souls. But it is what it is. The dungeon was fun. Honestly, I struggled so hard with that first boss because I was doing that mechanic where he does the split AoE, and my mind was not grasping it. Like, I don't understand what is going on. I don't know where I need to stand. I got through it amazingly, but my brain didn't click until the second time that I did it. And then I was like, oh, okay. Now I get it. Now I'm standing in the right spot. But it is what it is. And then I'm not sure how I felt about the whole mind break from Elidibus. Like, he seemed like that whole breakdown that he started to have towards the end. Like, I didn't really quite understand why. Like, back in ARR and everything that you'd seen with him prior to that, he seemed pretty mentally stable and pretty mentally with it, and then all of a sudden he's starting to have a mental breakdown, starting to forget things. I don't really get it. I don't think they really gave a good explanation for that. I can only guess that Emmett Selk somehow knew that when he died, he was the anchor keeping Elidibus sane or something. Or maybe it was also partially La Habrea and when they died, Elidibus just snapped and just fell apart. I don't really particularly care for that. But it is what it is. I do like that they confirmed the whole, basically the warrior, our character, the Warrior of Light, is the 14th Convocation member, the Seed of Azem. At least I think that's how it's pronounced. I thought it's kind of funny, like one letter off of from Azim, but the Seed of Azem. And hilarious moment when after you do the whole action time button when you gotta keep the bar up, and then she, I'm assuming it's a girl because I don't know. I haven't watched anyone else do a stream of it, but whenever they're talking about the 14th Convocation member, as a considering I play a female Ellison, they always refer to that Convocation member as her. So it could just be because my character's a girl, or it could actually be a girl. It doesn't really matter either way to me, but whenever they talk about her, they never really gave a name to her seat, and then we finally got a name to her seat, and then she shows up. I don't know how she shows up, but she shows up because we wished for it. And then she just kind of does that walk away thing, that the flick of their hand, like, be gone with you, or I'm done with you as I'm walking away. Hilarious. Loved that moment. That was so freaking funny. And then let's see, what else? What else do we need to talk about? Puppet's Bunker was brutal. Brutal. I'm sure I didn't have nearly as much trouble the first time I did Copied Factory as I did doing Puppet's Bunker, as I'm pretty sure anyone who's watched me fail through that whole thing can attest. Just totally brutal. But it was fun. It was a fun dungeon. I liked the story. I've never actually played any of the Nier games. I don't have a console beyond the Switch, and I can't really afford to buy a lot of games, so I've never played Nier. But I enjoy the story thus far. I'm a little bit confused about 2P and versus 2B, and it's like, okay, well, what's going on with all this? But it is what it is. I'm sure they'll explain it and everything, all the loose ends that we need to know to understand the story in 5.5. Yeah, 5.5. But speaking of dungeons, there is one thing that I don't necessarily agree with Square on. I kind of do, but I kind of don't. In their policy for Shadowbringers, probably going forth, is that they decided they're only going to do one dungeon per patch. I mean, I understand that to a point. Like, I understand, like, I like the idea of being able to have one really solid, really good dungeon every patch. That's really fun to do. But on the same token, I also can understand their perspective. Like, okay, well, even if it's a really good dungeon, if I don't like the theme, the context, or the bosses in there for whatever reason, I'm not going to enjoy this dungeon regardless of how good everybody else says it is. So having only one dungeon per patch kind of it makes it hard to always be able to enjoy the dungeons, because you may just not like one dungeon. If personally, I would go with the policy of alternating, like, one dungeon for one patch, then two dungeons, and one dungeon, then two dungeons, just switching back and forth, and then you'll have more chance of having a dungeon that you at least like, versus being one patch just being a dungeon that you just can't stand, and then hoping that every time you do your expert roulette, you get the dungeon that you can at least play, versus getting the dungeon that you don't want to play anymore. That's how I would do it. But I'm not Square. I don't know how well much resources they have to devote to doing dungeons. I would love to see more dungeons, but I understand that they might not have the resources to just constantly do 2 dungeons or 3 dungeons per patch. It's obviously a lot of work. I mean, I have a degree in software development, and I could tell you that programming is a lot of work. There's a lot of bugs that you got to work out, and so I've never done game development, but I would assume that it's just a ton of work on both an art side and a programming side. So I can understand them not wanting to do 3 patches 3 dungeons every patch or 2 dungeons every patch. But I think 1 dungeon every patch is too little. 1 dungeon, then 2 dungeons, then 1 dungeon, then 2 dungeons. I think that would be a better mix. Anyway, that's all I really had to talk about. Hope you enjoyed. Thanks for listening to me ramble if you made it this far. Have a good night. We'll catch you next time.